Do 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 do.
I don't know what that was.
That was me working on this thing, trying to get it work properly.
Okay.
What about now?
What about now? Is it working?
It doesn't seem to be working. What about now? Oh, yes, kind of.
What about now? Is it working?
It doesn't seem to be working. What about now? Oh, yes, kind of.
What about now?
Oh man, I've created a time loop.
Well, copyright that shit. It's a very important technology.
Very important technology. All of a sudden, I was talking to myself, and you were there a couple times, and it was intense, man. You were there a couple times. It was tense, man. Oh no!
Was that a school bell?
That was totally a school bell, man. Oh, it was from The Sims. Apparently, there's a Sims game coming out or something. Oh,
There's a school bell.
you can play 48 hours of game time for free. Jesus. Come on. You can do it. You can get there. I believe in you. Okay, seems fine. At least it seems less bad. Less really bad. I'm gonna turn the
Oh,
volume down just a little bit so I'm not screaming at everyone and everything. And
it's making me trepidatious then.
what did you say? Trepidation?
Trepidatious?
What?
Hopefully it's not that bad.
My hair is all crazy and I haven't shaved in forever.
That happens to the best of us.
I know. I know. Let's grab this little screen, bring it over here. Let's click this guy. Oh, we can flip that back to how it was supposed to be. Ah, look how bright it is. Yeah, no me gusta. Let's and it should be fine. Let's move this back to where it's supposed to be over here and do the whole color key color. Wait, yep, boom. Oh, look at that. Amazing. Oh, that's me. There I am. Hello, me. Hi.
Urban Watcher's Gaming Corner.
What did you say?
Urban Watcher's Gaming Corner.
What's gaming quarter?
Gaming Corner.
Oh yeah. Are you on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna hook up the Google Drive and we can get this show on the road. So I hooked up one of these like most terrible monitors next to my thing. I took one of the the TV that we have out in the living room and hooked it up to my computer as my second monitor temporarily since I don't have one.
Yeah.
And it's the most. It's so bad. It is so bad. Okay. Oh, that's totally 6. Let's create a new one. Create a new file. Called.
Okay, are we ready to go? Ready to do this thing?
Yes, sir. Let me get some music going. Where's my music?
I just only tweeted that we were ready.
Oh, that's good. Here when I'm tweeting, guys. I've heard about before. A tweeter.
I mean, you could call it that if you want.
I really don't.
It's acceptable.
All right. Let's get this show on the road in 5, 4, 3.
So you're playing music. Okay. So it's like our normal intro, but slightly different. Okay. Yeah. Other people can't hear you? Okay, so I'm just talking to myself.
Hello and welcome to episode. What the hell episode is it, Chris? Episode
13.
5. You say 15?
13.
13. That's 2 less than 15. Still an okay number, I guess. And today we're going to be talking about. Well, actually, you know what, Chris? I want to ask you a little question to start.
Yeah.
Did you listen to the State of the Union address like last week or whatever week it is? Last week, I think.
No.
Me neither, but everybody was always, they were all talking about how at the end of it, towards the end, Barack Obama was like, oh, and I'm not going to run any more campaigns. I'm not going to run any more campaigns. But and all the Republican people start clapping, standing up. They're like, "Oh, this is great! I'm so glad to hear that. We're not gonna have to deal with this guy anymore because we're a bunch of racist bigots, right?" And then
Way to alienate all the Republican viewers.
that's fine.
Yeah, we don't need those guys.
Like, do I want racist bigots? No, no. Okay, that's fine. And so everybody starts clapping, and then he goes, "Yeah, because I won both of them." It's like, oh, what a dick.
But did they forget about like term limits?
I think
I'm not running again. Yeah, because the term limits prevent me from running again.
yeah.
Oh, right.
I assume he meant like I'm not going to run for senator or congressman or whatever, all that other crap.
Has the president ever done that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, they've done it in reverse, right? So maybe.
Assuming there's nothing preventing you from doing that.
I suppose not. Anyway, so today, well, I don't remember. It was going to be a segue. It was going to be a good segue. Something about partisanship.
Talking about politics.
We're talking about politics. We're talking about a senatorial voting game. I'm gonna write that.
Okay.
Senatorial voting game. Woo. What did I just do? Ah! And what does that mean to you? So, I am just not having a good time over here. Boom. Senatorial voting game. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about the idea behind the senatorial voting game, where it comes from, what your thoughts were as we started discussing this idea.
Well, I was hoping to make a game where the primary mechanic was you're voting on something.
Mm-hmm. No.
And this is inspired by the Brave New World expansion from Civilization 5,
Mm-hmm.
where they have a World Congress, but only comes in like the final half of the game, because it wouldn't make sense if it was in the earlier half.
Yeah. Because there's no such thing as a World Congress before, like globalization and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was hoping to make a game primarily where the primary mechanic is voting.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because I haven't seen anything like that before.
Yeah, so
and there's hopefully some design space there that's interesting.
As far as games go where voting is concerned, I can only think of a couple of them. You have your standard games like Avalon and Resistance, where everybody's voting on one particular thing in order to try and gain more information off of whether or not their opponents are good or evil, or to try and make sure that they are able to complete quests or not complete quests.
Yep.
Other kinds of games like that. I mean, Counter-Strike has a voting mechanic where you can vote to kick people or vote to change the maps.
That's a server thing. That's less of a mechanic and more of a anti-trolling device.
Yeah, anti-trolling device. Good call.
I mean, League of Legends has a voting mechanic too, right? To surrender.
You can vote to surrender, yeah. But the thing is, that, it's never reached really a core mechanic for those games. It's never something that you're like, oh, I need to vote. I have to vote. I mean, I suppose some people might take it to the idea that, our general political system is a voting game. But then of course it brings into question the idea of whether or not player agency mattering counts, or whether they can just get away with the illusion of player agency matters. But that's beside the point.
Now we're really far afield.
So what we're talking about is we're having some kind of voting mechanic. What kind of characteristics are we looking at when we think about voting? Voting as a mechanic. Voting as a mechanic. Kind of polarizes you into making a couple of decisions. You know, you have to decide whether there's like a public voting or versus private voting.
Certainly.
Certainly, you have to decide whether you vote at the same time, or I guess we'll call it synchronous versus asynchronous. Synchronous versus
Hey, you got jargon this up.
synchronous. Whatever. I'll write same time too. What other sort of
Same time
characteristics?
versus turn
Versus
voting.
turn voting.
This
Thanks,
is a
Ray.
bullet. You see?
Yes, I do.
It's a casing right here and here, and it's just dead.
Thanks, Ray. The other thing is you have to think of whether it is, if there's, you know, kind of a representation versus like a all sort of voting thing, like a democracy. That is to say, do all of your people vote as like one individual unit? Or do they have a group vote as one unit and then another group vote as another unit and so on?
Are you talking about European style democracies versus American style democracies?
Yes.
Okay.
More or less.
Got it.
More or less like standard republic versus like Greek democracy.
Yes.
Yeah. Ah, chair, move. There we go. I'm in trouble, man. So, as a mechanic, you know, there's a couple of things that we're looking at when we're talking about voting. And I guess that brings into question, you know, what is the goal for a voting style game, for voting? What is the goal for voting just to exist?
As a mechanic, it's gives.
The wing zone
well,
guy was unexpectedly pleasant today.
Thanks, Ray.
it gives interaction, right?
It gives interaction. It serves as a way for players to, like in regular voting, people feel like their voices are heard. People feel like they actually they have impact. That it's an innate way for you to give the player an actual decision making thing.
All over the game
Yeah.
direction.
So as a core mechanic, when we're thinking about voting, we're thinking about players. They put all of their resources. They take their resources. They vote on some kind of issue, and so these issues kind of play into this idea. So what we end up thinking about is we have like a system, right? We have a system that consists of a couple parts. One is that the players have they have a reason to vote. They have a feeling inside of them that says, I need to vote for this thing. You have the actual voting itself, which is let me rephrase this again. These are not parts of the system. They're parts of the system requirements. So,
like building a computer.
Yeah, it's like you're building a computer. Yeah. So the players have to have a reason to vote. They need something to push them forward and saying, I look at this system. I say, what I'm looking at now is an issue. And it's not just that an issue needs to be voted on in such a way that everybody will agree. There needs to be a majority of the issues wherein the players won't agree. So,
and also there has to be a reason to vote both ways.
Yeah, exactly. So players need to have a reason to vote, and there needs to be some kind of divide between on the issue. At least in order to make it, interesting.
Yeah.
So for our system, what we see here is we're primarily focusing on the idea of, bills or some kind of thing that we're voting on. Thing to be voted upon that has interesting, I'm going to go with interesting outcomes either way. So that no matter which way, whether we pick, all of the players choose to be on one side, all of the players choose to be on one side, some division of the other, the outcome is something that's going to be, it gives the players the feeling that, what I decided, what I chose to do has an impact on how we're doing everything. So you have a system of bills, you have a system of votes, and and those votes, of course, are, the thing with which players vote. I don't know how to spell W-H-I-C-H.
You know, spell the wrong kind of witch.
The thing with which players decide on bill outcomes. So that way, they put in whatever their option is. They decide, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I suppose an important part of this, just to specifically put in here, I don't know how necessary it is, but this is not random. This is specifically the player input.
Yeah.
The bills could be defined randomly. They could be chosen randomly. There could be absolutely no player agency when it comes to bills, and you can still produce something kind of interesting, or at least a little interesting. And as long as your votes, the things that the players are actually doing, are impactful and chosen by the player. So what we end up with is this kind of feedback-ish kind of loop, where a player votes on a bill is presented, the players vote on it, an outcome is determined, and that feeds back into either A, how the players are going to select or bills are going to be determined, or B, how the players are going to vote in the future. So, Chris, do you have anything else you want to say about this system? This idea of you have votes, they apply to bills, bills produce an outcome, the outcome then will impact the way the players look at bills or as in general?
No, I think that's sums it up pretty well.
Okay. So, and I suppose that raises that system does present a couple of questions, a couple of jumping off points for our discussion and thought process today. The first jumping off point, which I'm going to talk about, and we're going to come back to multiple times, is this idea of hidden information and how hidden information, impacts the way that players make decisions in games, the way that players build strategies around games, and the way that players, overall carry themselves and handle their interactions between each other when we're talking about not only co-op or not only just games that they play with themselves where they don't know everything, but also how they interact with other players who may have different information from them. So what are our goals when we're looking at hidden information as something that we are putting into our game?
Oh, we definitely need hidden information so people don't become obstructionists, right?
Move, Steam. Obstructionist? What do you mean?
Uh, we don't want players. If players know everything, then the player in the lead is just always going to get obstructed, right?
Yes.
He's just always going to receive no votes just all the time.
So I think that
And that's part of the problem with the voting system, right? At least in the only other game that we know that has it, is that since they put it in a hard, you can only do obstruct 5 times in a row, then you lose. That's
yeah.
a pretty hard limit, right? So you can't just obstruct forever.
Wow. Why is it so big? There we go. So they kind of let me rewind a real bit. Yes, I think that is 100% completely true, but I think it's kind of a greater like scheme of things where hidden information is the kind of thing that presents how do I put this? Strategic advantages from like closed systems. So, for instance, if we take a look at a game like, I guess it's a way to input like strategic advantage into otherwise like balanced systems, right?
Yeah.
So, like you could take a game like Go, and like in and of itself, Go it has no hidden information. You can see every piece that's on the board, right? And
Yeah.
so when you choose to place a point, there is no unbalance between them, right? There is the only thing that unbalances the players is one who goes first, but then they attempt to take that out with the extra comey that they put at the end. Um, but more or less, the players do the same thing. Same thing with chess, where they can see everything. That means that every move can be analyzed. You can look at the whole system and say, there's going to be some kind of optimal move, as they've proven with things like Blue or what's his name, Deep Blue, Big Blue, whatever the chess playing computer is.
I think it's Deep Blue.
I think it's Deep Blue as well. So, hidden information, at least the way that I perceive it, is a way to one create a situation that is not solved. It
Yeah.
puts in questions. It allows players to have decisions that are more interesting. The other thing that it does is it kind of protects your players from themselves and from each other, right?
Yeah.
It offers like this extra thing where, if I make a bad decision, then I'm not really worried about it as much. I get to say, oh, even though the decision that I made might not for me, I am able to kind of hide it and brush it under the rug and say, okay, it's fine, it's fine. So I think that a majority of games usually going to have some kind of hidden information piece, or just in general, it's a good way to obfuscate whatever the top is and help to allow players to build strategies that are new and novel because nobody's there, A, to just push them down, and B, to kick their dirt in their face when they prove to them that they're wrong.
Yeah.
So, when we're talking, so what kind of brought up this idea of hidden information is we're going to talk about voting. So voting, like we said it previously, there's two ways that you can address voting. You can address voting in a public manner, or you can address voting in a private manner, where I go into the voting booth and nobody knows what my vote is, or I have to raise my hand in class and say, oh, I vote that we have pizza for lunch today. And everybody's like, Tubbs, what are you doing? Let's see, you need to go to gym class a little more. And so, Chris, what are your thoughts on this idea? What on the idea of public versus private voting?
Well, I think we want to encourage as much private as possible,
Mm-hmm.
so that no one's sure what anyone's going after.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So we can kind of address this in a pro con sort of fashion. I'm going to insert a little table right here, something like this. Oh my, what is going on? So if we put in this little column, we put in public votes, and we put in private votes. Under public votes, or under private votes, like we already said, there's this idea of how do I say this? What did you just say, Chris? I totally don't know how to reword this.
If everything was private, then it's much harder to figure out what strategy everyone is going for, right?
Yeah. So there's like we said, it kind of why is it hides players' strategies, motives. Whereas
Not completely, but better.
Yeah. Whereas with public, you're just show everyone what you're up to. So, I mean, that kind of is the core. I guess that's the core of it. With private voting, and like we said previously, all the other stuff with private voting, you get to vote for something that might be bad for you, and everybody doesn't know. Like, it kind of makes you feel a little less bad.
Yeah, so there's less bluffing.
Mm-hmm. So on the topic of bluffing, it's very, very challenging to bluff with public votes, right? Considering everybody knows what you're up to. But when we're talking about private voting, we get a little bit better of a chance. We have the opportunity to actually, potentially vote for something else that isn't, like I said, that isn't good for us, and convince the other players that no, it was someone else that was doing that. You see this all the time in games like you said, Avalon or other deceit games, where you're like, "Oh, I'm not the Cylon, you're the Cylon." Right? It's just, why would I? That doesn't make sense for me. It makes sense for you because you're the Cylon, right? And so it kind of encourages this bluffing idea, and the mentality, the way to handle, each other. Is there any other particular things that we want to touch on when we're talking about voting?
If private feedback is impossible, right?
What do you mean?
You can't be rewarded or penalized for your vote.
Ah, yes. No, it's not really no feedback. It's just no, I don't know. I guess it's direct feedback.
Yeah.
Where specifically because you voted this way, somebody's going to be unsure of what actually is going on. But whereas with public voting, that's not the case. With public voting, we're looking at you get direct feedback potential. So that can be either a reward or a detriment to what you're doing.
Yeah, so there's like a lobbyist card that says you gain something if you vote this way. You can't do that with private votes, right?
Yeah.
But you could do that with public votes.
So let's take another look at our system down here and kind of start to build a structure around what we're saying and fill in kind of little, I don't know, just blank ideas when we need to. Let's turn that off, and I wish there was a way to just decrease my font size from my hand using my keyboard, but there's not.
You should keep the font size big since
Since it's legible.
yeah, since it's probably easier to read on the.
Okay. So I'm envisioning kind of like a core, a core system, a core like gameplay loop. That's what I refer to it when I'm making digital games. So we'll call it that here. So our gameplay loop consists of first.
I mean, how the rounds are structured.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
The first thing that happens is somehow there's a bill.
Yes, bill gets placed.
And we know that all of our players are going to be voting on this bill. Then voting occurs.
Yep.
Votes are counted, and the outcomes, the results, or the repercussions, I don't know, the things that happen due to the bill.
Enacted. Bill is enacted or rejected.
Yeah. And then repeat as necessary. Okay, so each one of these little points needs to be drilled down, I guess. We need to figure out, here, how is a bill, let's write this down. How is the bill defined? How does voting occur? This one we need to determine what are the results of a bill, and this one is how does it end. So those are the 4 main points that we need to hit on in order to really draw some kind of conclusion or end point for this. So we're already talking about voting, so we can kind of continue to discuss voting a little bit more. For voting, we already pointed out, voting, both public and private, has different different goals. The goal of a public voting system is having a direct feedback response where everyone knows what's going on, so that way either players can get more information or they can, not get more information. Whereas with private, it's more about the obfuscation of what's going on, allowing players to kind of hide and shroud what they're doing in mystery. And also protecting their egos. Um, so, how do we want voting to occur?
Well, presumably you put in a pass or a reject card, probably.
So we have either pass or reject card.
And part of the idea is that you'll be getting more votes throughout the game by bribing other senators.
So what we're the idea is that the players, they start off with an initial influence, right? They have
Just their one vote, yeah.
a starting thing that they can vote on, which is their self. And I'm dying.
Are you undying?
I think so.
Okay.
No. So
Are you back?
Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
So there's pass or reject card, and that is representative of a single vote. In the beginning, you have you, right?
Yeah.
And somehow, throughout the course of the game, you accumulate more votes.
Accumulate influence.
Accumulate influence in the form of, spending more votes on other things.
Yeah.
So, if we kind of walk through this idea, we can walk through two little iterations of this loop. So some random bill is defined. We say, there's a pass and there's a fail. And each player starts off with their own vote. Each player puts in their own vote, and the very first round, we very much see what's going on. We see, hey, that person voted we should pass this. This person voted we should reject it. And with those, it kind of sets up this initial starting, system where it says, hey, I've planted in the players' minds this idea that, you may not be wanting to do the same thing that I'm doing, but you may want to be doing the same thing that I'm doing. After that point, votes are counted, Bill has done something, it does some other thing, and somehow some set of the players gain another vote. So now we have
Yes.
So now we have one vote. Well, let's say as player A, someone who gained a second vote, I have one voting card that says, this is Chris's vote. And I go, okay, cool. But then I also have another voting card that is blank, and it just says pass or fail or whatever.
Yes.
So
It
now,
doesn't, if we're going completely hidden voting, it doesn't need to say Chris's card. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So if we imagine the first scenario, with no things happening, there's no one can get any feedback from their own stuff, right? Like your actual vote doesn't matter as an individual vote, but it only matters as what the group has decided.
Yeah.
And as we're saying, players still want to feel like they have their own influence, right? And so by granting that at least one vote that says, hey, this has got your name on it right here, you can say, oh, okay, well, clearly that person thinks that. In the second iteration, as we go around the loop again, and we get back to this point where it says, voting occurs, now that I have two votes, I have a very interesting choice. I have the option of putting both of my votes into the same thing, saying I want to pass both of them, or I get to split my votes and say one of these is going to go to pass and one of them is going to go to fail, because I already think that other people are going to vote on one of them, on whatever one. And if it's already the one that I think, then I can either try to convince them, no, I want this thing to be rejected for some reason, with still having the same influence on the game, or I can do it the other way and say, no, I need it to pass, even though you're like, I actually really don't want to put too much effort into it passing.
Yeah.
It allows you to, it gives you a lot more of an interesting option where you can kind of feint one way and still have all of your eggs in a different basket.
Yes.
Okay. So, as we look here, one of the new answers that we have, one of the results of our voting system is to accumulate influence. So as we accumulate influence, I guess the question just comes, how do you accumulate influence? What is the results of us accumulating influence? Where does that come from? And with the system that we've already laid out here, we can see, one of our questions is how is bill defined? Clearly it's not going to come from there. The other one, how does it end? We're not too concerned about that at the moment because we know we want to give our players more than one vote. So it seems very clear that the accumulation of influence clearly has to come from how a bill is resolved.
Or it could just be a fourth step.
I mean, you could make it a fourth step. That doesn't seem fun, though, right? Because, I mean, so here, we can imagine it in two different ways. Let's say we make it a fourth step. That means that either A, there is going to be a predetermined divide between players in power that is based off of something other than their own actions, or B, there is not ever going to be a divide between players in power.
I don't understand.
So, assuming in this system, the only thing we're doing is somehow a bill is defined, we vote on it with either our own original influence plus any extra influence, and then we count it up, figure out what happened, and then we pass out another card to everyone else and go back up to the top.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, what is the driving factor for players to really? I mean, the way I see it is that from the perspective of players voting, there's going to be less of an impact as far as now we're adding in a different system. Like there's no system here that takes into account that idea, right?
Yes, it would be a different system.
There has to be we have to add on something else in after that point in order to say, now I want something.
But similarly, it would be a system that plays off the results of the build, right?
Yeah. So with the accumulation of influence, like we were saying, with gaining the ability to have more votes, either A, I suppose there is two ways that you can do it. One of them is somehow, whether it be through direct or indirect means, the players use the results of the bill in order to accomplish their vote or to accumulate their influence. Or B, it is just a thing that happens.
It's just a thing that happens. So like during the game, they'll be like, you just draw extra senators that would just become part of your thing.
That is one of the ways that it could be handled. Yes.
Yeah, got it.
Either A, like you said, it's a forced step, which is the way that I'm interpreting. You just get extra senators.
Yeah.
Or B, either directly by actually saying, oh, you gain 1 influence. Now you get another senator. Or B, you gain a resource, and through that resource you can accumulate senators or do other things.
That's the way
then
I was interpreting it as.
yeah, which for me is still it's still a results of the bill are accumulate influence, right? Like
Okay. All I'm saying is your gameplay loop needs a fourth step though, because there's no step where players get to like spend their resources they get from the bill, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So like I was saying, in and of itself, this is the voting system.
Yeah.
There is going to be a second system that goes and interrelates here, could relate here, and could even relate here in any of these points. Depending.
Really everywhere.
It really could just be complementary to all of these things.
Hopefully it should be if it's not too complicated.
Yeah, I mean, that's preferably the best way to do it, considering you can produce some kind of resource system or whatever that is powerful enough for a player to, you know.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to put this in light gray. Like that? Maybe it's slightly
Why don't we
less
just call
light.
it? That's hard to read.
I know.
We could just call that 3B or something. Step 3B.
I'm going to put it in light gray just to kind of show, this is. So it is going to be something, but in and of itself, this doesn't really exist. Like, you could create a game in theory that is a simplification of what we'll probably end up with. That is only if you voted, or if this is passed and you voted for it, you gain 1 influence. If this is failed and you voted against it, you gain 1 influence. If this is failed and you voted for it, then you gain 1 influence. If this is passed and you voted against it, you gain 1 influence.
Yeah.
Like, that game still is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of.
All I'm saying is in the rules, when you look at your gameplay look, it's going to have some step for the players. Right?
I mean, potentially. It doesn't necessarily. Like, you could have it
When
be...
I imagine a gameplay loop, I imagine we get the bill, voting happens, votes counted, do the stuff on the bill, and then the fourth thing would be the players do their things to gain extra senators or other stuff.
The thing is that each one of these things could be a branch point, right? Like, excuse me. So you gain, let's say you just gain your resource, and your resource is an influence point. You could have the bill is being defined. Let's say how the bill is defined is you look at the top one in secret and no one else can see it. And then players have some kind of influence points, and there's like a number on this bill that says, hey, if you pay X number of influence, we can just kind of shift this guy to the bottom. You can do the same sort of thing with voting, where you say voting, now I have these resource points, and it's just a temporary gain in votes. So I can temporarily gain, 3 or 4 votes during the voting process and say, okay, now I gain a couple votes, now I can throw my sway in wherever.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then same thing with the results. You could say, oh, the results of the bill are this, but if I pay X number of resources, I can make it this instead. Which is actually a little bit detrimental. So no, not that.
Yeah. Okay, so what next?
Now I suppose we have to talk about bills. We have to talk about where bills come from and what bills do and what their end result is.
Yeah.
So I guess we can jump down. I don't know. We'll jump down, I guess. And talk about bills. Oops. So we've already defined one characteristic of bills, which is that there is two sides. Two sides. There is a yay, yay, yay. Yay, yeah, yay, yay, yay,
Just pass or reject.
and bad, and no, nay. I don't know how to spell nay. There's a pass, and there's a reject. So
I guess yay is YEA
yeah, that seems
for
right.
future reference.
Thank you. So we know that the bill has basically, at its core, it looks like this. Bill name, I guess if there's a thing. It has
Yeah.
pass, and then pass result, like pass impact, I guess is what I'll call it, and then the reject.
Yeah.
And the reject impact. And that, at its core, is one bill. It says, we are voting on legalizing marijuana use. You say pass, everyone gets high all the time. Reject, suicide rates go up 10% or something like that. It's your core bill. So the things that need to be defined, a couple of things that need to be defined when we're talking about bills are, past results, like what the result is when a bill is passed, what it happens when it's rejected, and presenting an option for both players to do both of those things. So, just as a kind of thought experiment to point out and prove that there needs to be a second layer on top of this, we can start to address it from what I had said previously, which is that assuming that we only have this system where players select a bill somehow, the bill is voted on, the result of the bill grants the players influence, and then so on and so forth. In that scenario, what we really have is something that kind of falls flat when we're talking about pass and reject and the interplay between players and the system.
And why exactly is that?
So there's a finite limit of the amount of pass and reject like scenarios that can happen. So for instance, your result could be as follows: none. If you pass it, nothing happens, right? Or if for some reason it gets rejected, nothing happens. You can have it, if you voted X way, gain X influence and influence, right?
Yeah.
If you voted X way and it's either pass or rejected, gain and influence. We'll make these gain or lose because if X number of votes for passing it, all players who voted pass get and lose and influence, else players who voted fail get and And then the opposite of this, where if there's greater than or less than x.
Yep.
Those are basically the only things that you can do, or for these pass or reject statements, right? Very close.
Yes.
You could also do the kind of the inverse of the one where it's like you have to have X number of passing votes and it fails, and people who vote for fail get it.
That's just confusing.
Yeah. I mean, it is the opposite of this one. But basically, this is what your core is. So, and now we kind of look at this. So, when we look at it, we say, okay, the scenario is the player, somehow a bill is revealed. And we say, okay, we're going to vote on this bill. Everybody go ahead and vote. If you vote for pass, then you gain, and it's passed, then you gain some influence. Well, clearly, there's no reason to vote fail unless you're like super far ahead and you think other people are going to do it at the same time too, which, due to the fact that assuming we start with nothing and we only have our own influence, we're always going to want to gain more influence because everybody else is going to want to gain influence. So we're going to try and fail, or we're going to pass it, right? Same thing with fail. The
Well,
inverse,
you might just try and pass it with your one guy, right?
yeah. Assuming we only have one guy, like that's just kind of what's going to happen. If we have two guys, it's still going to be similar, like I said, unless other people have more or have less than us. In that case, then we're going to kind of want to do something a little interesting, which is we're going to still want to try and gain more, but because everyone already knows that we've gained more, there's no reason to divide our vote, right? Like, we still are going to be doing the same thing. So, for that scenario, we know that's basically solved. Like, we're always going to vote in that direction.
Okay.
For the second scenario, assuming we start with, let's say we just start with 1. In the scenario where we say if it's passed or rejected, and we voted the opposite way, like if we voted for pass and it's failed, then we gain influence. That scenario doesn't even really make sense because at that point, from one person perspective, from us only having one vote, there's no reason for us to want to go for that other side because we know there's no positive things to happen. And in fact, it's very much a case of the prisoner's dilemma where now it's better for me to just say, fuck all of y'all, I don't care about whether it passes or not, because in the event that other players vote the other way, you get something. But it's never ever going to be the case that you'll get something if you vote that way.
Yeah.
It's actually even slightly worse than the prisoner's dilemma because if everybody votes in the opposite way, no one gets anything. At least in that scenario, we would get like half. And then for the last one, it assumes a threshold, right? You have to meet this specific threshold in order to get influence for being the other way. So it says, we have to get 10 votes for the opposite side, at least. And if we voted for the side that actually got it, and there was 10 votes on the other side, then we will gain something. Once again, from the initial perspective, there's no reason to ever vote for the thing that doesn't gain you an influence. Because you're not, like, if somebody else forces you to make that, we're in that same scenario where now if I vote the other way, I don't get anything. But if I don't, then I'll get something. So for me, from looking at this all by itself, we can see it's pretty much like flawed. there has to be some other thing that we can do that says, there has to be a positive reason to vote for both things and to want both things to pass at one time or another. And with this system, with the fact that we only really have one resource built into the way that we're doing it, we can't really gain anything from that.
Well, yeah, I was imagining more resources.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that was just me
And more things to
presenting
do.
and saying,
Yeah.
this is the most elegant way to do it. The way that we had already said,
Yeah.
and getting rid of part 4. Like, at its core, that is a voting game. However,
Yeah.
because of this problem here, a voting game by itself can't really exist just due to that. There has to be some other kind of a resource or some other kind of benefit for voting either way. And you see this in things like that in the pre-existing voting games already, like Avalon and Resistance, where if you're bad, voting bad is good. If you're good, voting good is good.
Well, if you're bad, voting either way has advantages.
Either neutral or too good, yes. Too
But
bad.
if you're good, there's only one way to vote ever.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do the very bold play of putting in a negative and then watching for the spies.
If you know that one of the other people is in that you're going on the quest with is bad, but you haven't convinced your opponents of that yet, you can put a fail in.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
and completely screw yourself over if they call your bluff and also put a fail in.
That's just further proof. That's actually what you prefer. All right.
Okay. So, enough of that. We now can go back up here and say, hey, in addition to this, we have some way for players to influence, to really attack that problem, to look at what they gain out of the bill, to gain different things out of a bill, and to spend them how they may. Which means that has to be the thing that we look at next.
Okay.
So, Chris, now that I've talked for a ridiculous amount of time, talk to me about resources and their buddies' resources for this game.
Resources and buddy resources?
No, I don't know, resources and their buddies, and I was going to say influence, but then I realized that's just a resource, and I just stopped talking.
Are we just throwing out resource ideas?
Well, first off, what do you want the resources to do?
Mainly, I thought the resources would buy you votes.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
This is sort of a or 2, move towards a victory condition.
Okay. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing somehow you can buy extra votes with these specific resources, or you can move towards, completing the game with gaining X number of resources or so. So as we saw in our previous system, we know that resource can't be just one resource, which means there has to be more than one resource in here. And I'll kind of put this as a subtext under one, just there has to be, let's put more than one resource. So there's more than one resource. Oh, Chris and his AP style.
It should be spelled out.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Okay, and what's the main way players are getting these resources?
So we have two ways that we can do things. We can do things either, as we said before, when we were talking about the gaining of the influence, we can do it either based off of a trigger or based off of a forced thing.
Do you mean automatic?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, for non-automatic, when we can do that.
Yeah.
It probably has more strategy.
So when we do it based off of a trigger of some kind, it grants you a lot more options from the idea of like, okay, now we can choose to either do something or not do something different,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Whereas automatic, basically it says, this is what we're doing now, and there may be variances between what we're doing, but this is going to happen most likely.
Yeah.
So once again, if we take a look at our system, again, trying not to just add random things, we see, okay, we can do it based off of voting. So voting could gain you a resource, or the results of a bill can gain you a resource, right? Because since the votes are counted, and we already know that we have one card that looks like us, we can gain resources off of A, how the bill is resulted, or B, actually voting on something.
Based on voting of stuff.
Based
And
on
based off of
bill resolution.
based on bill resolution. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, even if we take a look at this and we say, okay, player, there's resource A. What are you gonna say, Chris? Go ahead.
I forgot resources should be able to connect you to lobbyists too.
Lobbyists.
Yeah.
Do we have filibusters?
I believe this episode of this title will answer your question.
There are no filibusters. Well.
Because filibusters are boring. Yes, I was thinking of gaining resources based on how you vote off stuff, right? And then lobbyists would change. There would be like a base way that this happens, right? Based off the actual bill.
Yeah.
A lobbyist would change what you gain, right?
Oh my.
Or gain you more. Because of what they do in real life, right?
Because like the big tobacco, right? Says, if you vote for me, I'll give you some tobacco.
Even more of this resource. Or like another resource or something, right?
Yeah. You've got big tobacco, and you've got, big oil.
Yeah.
You've got big, I don't know, military. You got big, I don't know, Google. Big Brother. Oh, Big Brother. Shit, this is a good, I have to write these down. Big oil. Big tobacco. Big Brother.
Big Pharma.
Big Pharma?
You never heard that one?
I've never heard that before.
Oh, okay. Maybe I just read too much anti-genetically modified organism stuff because I hate
Damn
read
you,
that. So.
Kickstarter!
Not that, like actual anti-GMO stuff because I hate it. So I hate read it.
So I hate read it.
Like big pharma is lying to you. God damn it. I mean that's true like a bunch of the time, but not this time. God damn it.
You hate the GMO stuff or the anti-GMO stuff?
The anti-GMO stuff.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Dude,
So
they've heard of big pharma like all the time.
yeah, I just looked it up. I just saw big pharma definitely a thing.
Yeah.
There's a big pharma conspiracy theory, and it's a pointless target for Warren Buffett. Is that who this is? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now that I got that tangent out of my blood, so
Yeah.
what we've got is we've got players can use their resources in order to gain more votes. They can also use their resources in order to connect to lobbyists who will allow them, force them to vote for things, for specific targets on specific issues, and give them more resources.
It doesn't force them. It just.
Yeah, they have the option to.
If you do vote this way, wink, wink.
Yeah. So they have the option to vote for specific targets. They can vote for, good things for big oil, good things for big tobacco. I can even call it big business. Is that different from big oil and big tobacco? I guess so.
Yes.
And by doing that, they can get more resources by voting in that way in case it serves them. Or they can still vote, based off of whether they want to pass or fail. And then the last thing is either it can move them towards the win condition. So if we are looking at our stuff again, back up at our game loop, we see as far as the repeat is necessary, this is the ending of our game loop, serving as a win condition. How do we escape our game loop? And that is, of course, with some kind of end state. End state in this case being gain an X number of resource of X kind or however in X combination, and boom, you're out. That's the end.
Well, when I say move towards a win condition, I don't mean you gain these resources. If you gain enough of these resources, you just win. I mean, you could spend them, and it would help you towards whatever win condition you're going for, right?
So what kind of example are you thinking of?
Okay, so I've imagined this one bill. Okay, it's called deregulate business. I'm writing it down at the bottom here.
Yep.
So there would be a business freedom track. And you move business freedom up one when you do it. And the person who put this bill out gains one resource plus one resource for every business freedom it has out. For however far it is along the track. Right?
Okay.
And then one person's win condition would be in secret, get business freedom to a number. To like 8 or something. And presumably this would be hidden, right?
Yeah.
So the guy who has this obviously would vote for this, or would put this bill forward, but other people would put this bill forward because it gives them a whole bunch of resources, right? Mm-hmm. Especially at the end. So there's a reason for both players to want this. But once it gets to 7, right, no one's going to vote for it. Do you agree? Disagree?
I'm not sure I'm not sure I quite see what you're trying to say.
Okay. So once business freedom is at 7, if I know one of my opponents might have this win condition,
Yeah.
I'm going to be very less likely to vote for it. So you should have a way to push some resources to get that last point, right? Presumably an expensive way to do it, something I can only do like 1 or 2 times, so we cannot just rely on that method.
Yeah.
But something to push it to find a way, basically. I mean, some players might have a win conditions that's just like gain X resource. That might be a thing too.
Yeah.
But when I say move towards a win condition, I mean that people should have the option of influencing their win condition somehow with resources, probably. Unless we think that the buyer player's votes is going to be enough to do it.
I think so. Here's my concern with this. So,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to kind of look at what we have. So, so getting resources allows you to buy senators. So the way that I'm envisioning it is there's like probably right now 5 resources. You've got.
Oh, that's a lot more than I was thinking.
Well, I'm just looking at the lobbyists that I have written down. I'm just saying, okay, those are our lobbyists.
Okay.
So those lobbyists each are related to 1 resource, or maybe there's 3 resources, and they have, maybe big business and big pharma are like a combination. Like business is a combination of Big Brother's resource and Big Oil's resource, and Big Pharma is a combination of Big Brother and Big Tobacco.
Okay.
Which makes sense from a
yeah,
mechanical perspective.
That's decent. I can see that. Yeah.
Or maybe oil is business and government. Probably that one. So let's say you have 3 resources. With those 3 resources, you're going to be able to buy senators, and every single one of those resources is going to be necessary for you to buy a large amount of senators. So you'll have senators that need 1 of a specific type of resource. You'll have senators that need 2 of a specific type of resource. You'll have senators that need 1 of 2 each of a different type of resource. You'll need senators that have 3 each of a different type of resource, or 1 of 1 type and 2 of another type.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what I'm saying. What I see is that the senators, they basically have their own motivations. This guy,
yeah.
He really, I don't know, has invested big stuff. He's a business owner. He needs business resource in order to get it. So by giving him business resource, you can convince him to join your side, and you gain him as a senator whose vote you can play.
Yeah.
So that would be how that kind of system of getting more votes would work. You would vote either on one side, or you would pass or fail a vote, and it would gain you a thing of some kind that allows you to do that. Then you would be able to use those resources to go and buy more lobbyists to increase the income, so that way you can more efficiently buy senators towards the middle and end of the game, and maybe move you towards the actual resource acquisition, or buying something actually super important, like perhaps there's things that are greater than senators. Perhaps there's like, I don't know, a supreme justice, and the supreme justice says, guess what? Everything that you're doing, constitutional. Maybe there's a commander in chief who says, everything you're doing that's related to something sounds good. We're gonna pass that. Maybe you can only use that once or whatever. But anyways, there's like bigger, more impactful ways that you could do it. And maybe they could play into your win condition or whatever. I don't know. But we can kind of add this back to our core for what we're looking at, which is somehow a bill is decided. We look at our votes, what votes we have. We pay our votes to do our thing. We end up getting the resources or things that occur as results of that. We spend our resources to gain more things now, more senators, more lobbyists, or this other third thing, and then so on and so forth. So the thing that I'm concerned with is I'm not concerned. I lied.
Okay.
I think I'm concerned, and I might still be, but I'm not sure.
You don't know what about?
I'm not concerned enough to be really concerned about it. The issue that I was kind of seeing was like the idea that, you know, I have to get the business track up to a specific point. If all players have similar win conditions like that, where we have to get X track up to X point, then there's no reason to ever try and get anything past that point except for your own.
Yeah, but the person who put this bill gets a whole bunch of resources, right?
Yeah.
So there is a reason if you need a whole bunch of resources.
The thing is, you're still running that huge risk, though. Like, so imagine there's one that's like, you need to get like business freedom up to 5, and another one up to 5 or something.
Well, yeah, I mean they want to all be like tracks though, right?
Yeah. So what kind of other things are you looking at? And how would that be impactful on your things? Like,
So basically, I had 2 ideas, and the track one was one idea, right? And the other one would be like a pork barrel project.
I don't know what that means, and you keep saying it.
That's when you add something to a bill that's just like for your district, right? Like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Like a manufacturing project that's just in your district, which I mean is a good thing, but people do it to senators do it to score points, right?
Yeah.
So you gain what this bill does is just you gain a pork project. Which gives you more options somehow. That's somehow beneficial to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the win condition related this one would be like if there are 10 pork barrels out. And this is permanent. It's not like a resource, right?
Yeah.
Permanent thing. You win. And yeah, the balance would be making sure that this thing that you want right here is actually beneficial to you enough that you're going to risk helping someone else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the risk here, it has to be the gain has to be enough that you would actually want to use it.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts?
I'm thinking.
Because the things that bills do, right, need to be impactful, I
Yeah.
think. They need to somehow be able to help someone else, and they need to be somehow help the person who put them forward, right?
So the ways that I see bills is that there's at least 3 characteristics of them that we care about.
Yeah.
The first one is that it is of a specific type. So you have your business regulation bills, you have blah blah, I don't know, different kind of social justice bills or things like that. And
Yeah.
that characteristic of it being that type of bill helps to move forward this sort of track idea, which I think I was already thinking of something like that. It's just that's the kind of where you want to go. That's the first part. The second part is that that when it passes or fails, there has to be a reward for those people.
Oh yeah, and that's just
right.
The second part
Mm-hmm.
of the thing, right? This isn't the full bill. The full bill would read something like that. If you vote yes, some benefit.
Yeah.
And I think that if you vote yes is always stronger than if you vote no, because people's natural inclination is to vote no, right?
I don't know. You could have negative impacts on your bills. Like you could have one that's like, I don't know, Senate reorganization, and everybody has to put all of their senators back except for their one original token.
That's true. That's true.
So, like in that case, you could have a bigger negative impact. But if more votes end up being yes, which is actually kind of hilarious. Yeah, actually, that could happen.
Yeah.
Because if there was one person who's super far ahead in that case, and everybody else is like no, but together they're like, okay, we can vote yes on this, get rid of all of his things, and kind of give him a little bit extra of a jump, so he doesn't feel as bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's for something like this, the two I talked about, where the benefit is to the person with the win condition and the person playing it. I think the natural pull of most people is going to be to vote no.
Yeah. Under a majority of circumstances, voting yes will give you a better resource or better output than voting no.
So yeah, if the thing was if you vote no, you get a resource, then they're definitely going to always vote no. That's not even a choice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I think voting no probably should be a thing, right? Like, if you vote no, get at least some kind of resource, right?
To make it like a choice.
Yeah.
You get some kind of resource here.
You get some kind of resource, most likely, under most scenarios.
Yeah, and then you just get a different kind of resource,
or
one of the different
less.
ones, but less.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking one of the different and less.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how basically, yeah, that's how I was thinking most builds would look.
And I agree. Except I know you know me, and I always want something interesting to put on those other bills. Like, I always want something that's like, you know, above and beyond just clear resource change and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I had another build, but it doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Meaningless Declaration.
What does it do?
Nothing. If you vote yes, gain resources of your choice. If you vote no, gain resources of your choice.
Wait, what?
It's just a smoother. If you want resources of your choice, you play it.
What if it's
Well, like if it passes, like the player who played it gets a couple resources of their choice.
yeah?
Yeah. Does nothing. That's pure resources.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the flavor. So what else besides resource moving around do you think could be done though?
What else besides resource moving around do I think could be done? I think it's all ends up being resource moving aroundy, but it's kind of like which resource you're moving around. So, for instance, you have the resource of being able to pick who goes, or being able to pick the what's it called?
Bills?
The bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can be like, oh, you know, I get to pick the next bill too, after either some kind of resource gain or some kind of blah blah blah. You have the resource of having senators. You have the resource of being able to play senators. You've got adding lobbyists. You've got special senators who do other things, maybe. Let's take a moment and go take a look at our loop again and see what we've got at this moment.
Yeah.
So,
I guess how did you want the build defined? How is the build chosen?
so you can either do it by like a player action or like a game action, right? Player can decide this is how we're going to do it, or the game
Yeah.
can decide this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
When the game decides, it can be either a random or a defined way, or based off of player input.
Yeah.
If it's random, you would have something like a deck, or something of that matter. You would have like a track where you're gonna go this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill, and you might go back to the center or back to the beginning. You could have something that's like a combination where it's like, oh, you have a track of bills which are going to be voted on, and you start at one point, and that point might be determined randomly, like you roll a die and you start on one of those points. And then sometimes bills let players, or certain senators let players pick where to move the track to a certain point. Move the token to a certain point on the track.
If it's a game action, how are we deciding which player proposed the bill, basically?
What do you mean? That was what I was saying. So the players,
Okay.
the players proposing a bill isn't a game; it's a player action.
I mean, for the bills that I have, right, one player needs to propose it to get the benefit of it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It could just be like there's a token that signifies which player's turn it is, and that goes around.
Yep.
And then if you had that plus the track, you could set it up so that way, like on your turn, it was that thing. It's a little complicated.
Yeah.
But it's not just picking. So like there's just picking. That's like your base one, right? Players go, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. And that would allow you to go, now you get to pick. You get to have agency in that. Then there's like having a track and players getting to move the token on certain like characteristics. For instance, perhaps there's certain senators that say, okay, now we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I suppose that when you do that, it would do that, but you'd have to make that number a little bit lower, plus you'd have to buy senators of a specific type, which I think would be fine, but yeah. I mean, really, how complex do we want to make this? Do we want to just start off with this basic part where you get to choose, and then go on from there? I think that seems fine.
I'm pretty. The choose seems fun to me.
It seems safe. So
More in flavor.
Oh, and then
something I want to steal from Brave New World too is that 2 players choose them at the same time.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because the interesting thing they do is your extra votes you can only put towards one of the votes.
Mm-hmm.
So you get your own vote on each one, but you have to choose how you're going to divide your the rest of your voting power between them. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I like that too, like Brave New World's mechanic, because it adds that little twist that makes it interesting, and you have to decide how you're gonna like approach it.
Yeah. Okay. What am I thinking? I think that's fine. Just players choose 2 same time, and then they get to vote. But so you're always going to have 2 of your own set, right?
Yeah, you're gonna have 2 of your own set. Yeah.
So what I was thinking was, you have 2 tokens, right? Like the starting player token in Agricola.
Yeah.
And they both move around the players. And then there's like certain senators that you could buy that would allow you to move one of the tokens. So like at certain points, it would allow you to repick. So like if you buy it after your turn, then you get to move it back to like someone again behind you. So you get to take another like 2 turns in a row first before everyone else does.
So moving the, I guess you'd call it like a speaker token to put more bills out.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
that's what I'm
Got
saying.
it. Okay. Would that be on a bill though?
I was saying it could either be on a senator or a bill, depending on what happens.
I'm saying, is this something you buy via resources, or is this something you play by bill? Because do you see the problem with playing with it with a bill, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's ways you can get around doing it with bills, for instance, or around with doing it on bills.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely ways to like spend your resources to do it, right?
Yeah.
The same way you're getting lobbyists and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have our voting basically defined. This accumulate influence is no longer a thing. I guess it kind of is, which is
Well, when I wrote that, I mainly meant accumulate resources, which represent influence.
accumulate new senators to join your party. So votes are counted. We have our bills. The results of a bill are as follows below. Primarily resource gain. Can be other effects. For instance, getting rid of senators from all players' hands. Adding lobbyists or doing different things. Removing lobbyists, I guess, would be the better way to do that. More flavorful.
Yeah.
And so on. So really just impacting those. And like we said, you're going to have when you vote for this, you're going to get something, right? When you
Yeah.
vote yay or nay, you're going to get some kind of resource, and depending on some, it's going to be lesser for one of the 2 options, or equal, depending on whatever it is. And then you'll get some kind of resource for it, or you will also move up the track for it.
Yeah.
Players can then, at that point of their turn, or is it all turns? All players take the same turn during it? Like,
I think they could all take the same turn.
yeah, I think that they all do. I think that it starts with.
I don't think the interaction comes in the bill voting, right?
It does, but it also comes out here because you can buy senators that other players want to buy.
Right.
So like, I feel like it should either go like the reverse direction when you're buying things, or the same direction but not starting with the first player, because the first player is more likely to gain more things from it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So like if it starts with, the person to his right and goes backwards, or the person to his left and then goes around, I think that's probably better.
Yeah.
And then we already defined some of our end conditions. Some of them are down here. Get 8 to freedom business track. Get X number of these pork barrel tokens out, which are just like a permanent buff of some kind. Like your player's token is worth more, or things like that. Perhaps things cost less for you, or some number of little buffs that you can put in there.
Yep.
And then I believe that's how you reach your win condition. Is there any other things that we're missing, Chris?
Not on an outline.
Yeah, not at an outline. Of course, we're missing like the actual detailed things.
Yeah.
I've been thinking, do we want to define all of those things right now and just continue on with this, or do you want to do it separately and bring it back like we've been doing?
We can bring it back.
Okay, sounds good. So in that case, I think that we've reached the end of today's adventure, today's excursion into what it is to be a senatorial voting game, how to make it so that way your players feel engaged, and how to incorporate hidden information in a positive way into your game loop, into the interactions that your players have with not only with each other but also with the rest of the system, and how to keep your players happy. Chris, any last words?
No.
No last words from Chris. I just want to say thank everyone for watching. We are on Twitter at TableTop Masons, and you can email us at tabletopmasons@gmail.com. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and I hope you'll have a good night. See us next week for our playtest of this game. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.